What does the Bible say about skeptics? The Bible has an uneasy relationship with skepticism as a whole. On the one hand, it warns against doubt. James 1:6 says that the doubter is like a wave being tossed around by the wind. In John 20, Jesus tells Thomas, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet still believe." But then in 1 Thessalonians 5, we're told to test all things and to hold fast to what is good. And then that same story about Thomas, Jesus allows Thomas to put his fingers into the holes in his hands, feet, and side before he believes that it is truly him who has been resurrected. So which is it? Blind faith or critical thinking? Should we trust what we can't see, or should we withhold faith before we ourselves can finger Jesus's holes? Skepticism is crucial because it's how we separate truth from fiction. Without it, we'd all just believe whatever we're told or whatever pops into our heads. The fact is, if something is true, it will withstand scrutiny. If it crumbles under questioning, then it was never worth believing in the first place. But what do you think? Do you think we're missing something or that there's some merit to faith? If so, give us a call because the show starts right now. Welcome, one and all, to the Atheist Experience. Today is March 2nd, 2025. I'm your host, Forrest Valkai, and joining me today is the lovely and charming Jim Barrows. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing really, really good. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well, man. Never had a bad day in my life. Before we get started, there's a couple of things we got to say. The first is that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. The second thing that we have to say is that we have a question of the week situation right now. We always do this share your experience thing where we ask you to leave your opinions in the comments. Last week, we asked you, what was God doing before he created the universe? And here are the three favorites of Johnny P. Angel himself. Number 3 says, what God was doing before he created the universe? Furiously masturbating. The Big Bang was really the Big O. The second is, before creating the universe, God contemplated his own existence. Where did he come from? Where did he go? Cotton-eyed God. And then finally, number 1, God was trying to figure out what to create the universe out of, only to realize through his horror that he had literally nothing to work with. Love that. Make sure to put your answers below to this question. The prompt for this week is, what can you say in a sales pitch, but not at the pulpit? That's a pretty solid one. Do you have anything you want to add to that? I just my first time seeing that, so I have nothing prepared.
Yeah. I can't think of anything off the top of my head either. Well, not that is good for a family show. Let's just say.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
You made the finger in the holes joke earlier, and I'm kind of going along those lines. Just run your fingers up and down this, right?
Yeah. Give it feel the quality. Gosh.
Yeah.
Fortunately, our audience is more clever and funny than we are, and so they will surely give us some answers. And Johnny Angel himself will be the one who decides what the best ones are, because he is also more clever and funny than we are.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about more clever, but he's definitely funnier.
He is a very funny man. With that, we've got a great show for everybody today, so I'm so glad that everybody's tuning in. Thank you so much for being here. We've already got lines filling up like crazy. We've got 10 people waiting on the line. As always, we will be prioritizing theist callers. If you're a theist and you're calling in, we're going to try to take those calls first, talk about what you believe and why you believe it. And then we might even try to get a chance to talk to some atheists or whoever else before the end of the show as well. But for right now, if you're watching this, if you believe in a God or gods, if you believe that faith is a good pathway to truth, if you believe that the Bible is true, if you want to talk to a couple of people who don't believe these things in a serious way, this is your chance to give us your best shot and to talk to us about things that matter. And maybe, who knows, if you're right, you could save thousands, tens of thousands of souls who are listening to this show, or we could just have a pleasant conversation. The number on the bottom of the screen there is 512-991-9242. So pick up your phone, give that a call, or use the link in the description. I believe we have a web link that you can call into as well. As for right now, Jim, do you have any preferences here? Because I see a couple that I'm interested in, but I don't know if you have any preferences.
Well, I thought I would
Let's look at
say
lines
the guy
3
we've been
or
waiting
8.
for. 3, yeah, that works too. I don't have any
Oh,
preferences.
who's the guy we're waiting for?
The guy that number 2 there.
Number 2. Oh yeah, sure, I can do that too. Yeah, that sounds great. So let's do Tommy. No pronouns given, calling in all the way from Portugal. My goodness, who wants to talk about the problem of suffering. Tommy, you are on the Atheist Experience with Forrest and Jim. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you for choosing me.
Yeah. So what did you want to talk about us? About with us? Those are words. Those are all the words I was trying to say.
So I do believe that the problem of suffering, and in general the problem of evil, is the greatest challenge to the Christian faith. I think it's very hard to try to come up with any sort of answer, and I often find that the answers many Christians come up with are just not worthy of any respect, either morally or rationally. I do respect to a great extent people who reject God based on suffering. I think that's respectable, I understand them. But I would like to try to give them a different view, a Christian view on the problem of suffering that I find is underrepresented.
Okay, so just to be clear, the problem of suffering and the problem of evil really is what it is, because it's not suffering. Suffering is just something that happens, but it really is the problem of evil, right? And that is that if God exists, then God is omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect. If God is omnipotent, then he has the power to eliminate all evil. If God is omniscient, then God knows when evil exists. If God is morally perfect, then God has a desire to eliminate all evil. Evil exists. If evil exists and God exists, then either God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil, or doesn't know when evil exists, or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil. Therefore, God does not exist. That's the formal argument, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that understanding of the problem of evil relies on assumptions about God, the world, and the relation of God to the world that I would say not only are not the best, but are not representative of classical Christian belief. That we can take it from a specific angle if you'd like to attack it, or do you want me to?
You're the one driving this. I agree with the problem of evil. It means that the Christian God, as the tri-omni God, right, the omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God, can't logically exist. So if you're going to make an argument, then you need to prove that evil can exist with that tri-omni God.
Yeah, basically the only time I've ever, like, I've talked to a lot of Christians who struggle with this, and the only arguments I've ever heard against it, and I know you said that a lot of the arguments are bad, so like you probably agree, but the only arguments I've ever heard against it thus far are either that the tri-omni situation isn't what we think it is, that one of those omnis isn't real, or that evil is actually a necessary and good part of the grand divine plan. And so God is allowing this evil on purpose. Or the third one is the cop out of saying, well, it's all about free will. And like you have the free will to do evil and God can't stop you from having that free will, which also goes against the Bible and the concept of God in the first place, but that's neither here nor there. Those are the three ones that I get all the time, is either one of the omnis is not right, or evil is actually good, or God must allow evil and still can have the tri-omni situation, which kind of goes into the second one as well. Right. If you're offering us one of those, I will be apocalyptically grumpy with you. But if you're offering us something different, I'm into it.
Yeah, well, my biggest problem with the second one you mentioned, that's the one that I find most abhorrent. The idea that evil is necessary and good.
Right. Because the end justifies the means, right?
Right. My response, yeah, I have many problems with that. So my response is, it will either be the first and the third, or it will at least sound like them. So the understanding of God in the classical Christian tradition that I adhere to, like the basic definition of God, it doesn't start at the tri-omni properties. There's something that you conclude from the idea of God being limitless and infinite. And so he's limitless and infinite in every way. And you need to start from that and to understand the omni properties within that context. So when we say that God is all powerful, it's because he's unlimited. And so nothing can limit his nature from expressing itself fully.
Right.
And because God's nature is good and goodness, the idea of God doing something evil or bad would itself be a limitation of his nature. The only way for God to do something evil would be for something to limit God's nature from expressing itself.
Well, so it's the problem of evil is not that God is doing evil. So the problem of evil is not God doing evil. The problem of evil is that God allows evil to exist.
Which you could argue is doing evil.
Yes,
Like if I don't stop somebody from being murdered, you could argue that I'm culpable, you know?
Well, only if you're I would say only if you're omni-benevolent, right? If you're a human being, your ability to interfere without risk to yourself means you're by definition not omni-benevolent.
That's a good point. Yeah, omnibenevolent and omnipotent go along with that. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. So like, yeah, it's kind of my issue, Tommy, from what you just said. I don't understand the difference between your statement about God's, the omnipotent power, the unlimited power. I don't understand the fundamental difference between that and any other way that we could say that. To say, if I just say to you, there's nothing God can't do, God is all powerful, God can do whatever he wants, and you say God has no limits, nothing can stop God from expressing his nature, which is to be good. No, I don't understand the fundamental difference between these two concepts and why you're drawing a distinction.
Yeah, because this understanding of God's nature is what connects to the third response you mentioned, of the idea that to God, evil exists because of our choices. And for God to remove our choices would be for God to do something bad, because choices, meaningful choices about morality, are important.
So just to be clear, then, like what you're saying
is not a limitation on his power.
So just to be clear, God sees somebody doing something evil, murder, rape, genocide, whatever it may be, no matter how bad, no matter how extreme it is. God sees this and makes a moral judgment that either God can stop this evil taking place or can allow it and preserve this person's autonomy. And God values the autonomy of the murderer, rapist, genocidal, whatever, that person's autonomy to do whatever they want is more of a moral high ground for God than interfering and stopping this evil thing from happening to innocent people.
I think that would have to be, that seems to be the only coherent response to the problem of evil.
So let me propose this to you. Let me propose this to you. A parent sees their child getting ready to hit another child. Should they allow that, or is it moral to allow that, or is it more moral to put a stop to that?
I would say we should put a stop to that.
How is that any different than God wanting to put a stop to people doing evil?
Because the idea is that if God does not allow any evil, that would essentially turn us into just robots doing
whatever. If the parent doesn't allow the child, then just substitute God for a parent allowing the child to hit another child. Just make that substitution for me and tell me how that works. Because the actions are the same, right? I could say God knows that one child is about to hit another child, and you're saying it's okay for God to not interfere, but it's not okay for a parent to not interfere. What's the difference here? All we're doing is substituting the subject, God, for parent, right? That's all we're doing. It's the same situation, and you have two different moral choices. You're claiming one's good, one's bad. I don't see any difference. So what's the difference?
Yeah, great question. I understand it's hard to hard to respond. I would say that when we stop a child from hitting another child, we are not removing the limits. We're not removing the ability for the child to like deliberate.
God doesn't have to. God's in the exact same situation. He doesn't have to limit the child's ability to make a choice at all. God is in the exact. In fact, God is as an omnipotent being. God is in a better position to stop one child from hitting another child without interfering with that child's free will than the parent is, right? And you're making this assumption, assumption that everybody who comes into this argument makes, is that the only way for God to prevent something from happening is to take away somebody's free will. It's really, he has many more options. For instance, he could simply move the two apart, right? A parent would over and grab the swinging fist and stop the fist and lecture the child. God could do the same thing, right? So anything that a limited power person, individual can do, entity can do, God can do better because he's not limited. So once again, you're limiting God's ability to interfering with free will. So you're putting a limit on your God. And you're putting a limit on your God that the parent doesn't have, right?
I think an important distinction is the idea of understanding creation, like all of creation as one whole. That
has nothing to do with. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
It doesn't.
It does.
You're going off on a tangent. Because what we're talking about,
the parent and the child are part of the same thing. They're part of creation. God is apart from creation. Right. The whole point of creation is for it.
So this. I'm sorry. Tommy, what's frustrating to me is that what's frustrating to me, Tommy, is that you're trying to put God as this special thing where like morality doesn't seem to apply to him in the same way, and yet he is the final arbiter of morality. Well, by saying that he's different from creation, so like all the evil and suffering that happens in this world is different, has different rules and different implications because he's separate from creation. Like, how is that not what you're saying?
Because the suffering isn't doesn't come from God. It comes from creation.
Not suffering. It's evil. We're not talking about suffering. We're talking about evil.
It also, like, I'm sorry, but it ultimately does. It come from God. Ultimately, it does.
Right, because I think what you're missing is that what I'm saying is that God and the parent are both moral actors. So I don't care who the moral actor is. If you claim that a moral actor is acting morally when they stop a child from hitting another child, then substituting in an actual person or entity, God or a person, doesn't matter, you're now changing, and you come up with two different answers to the same scenario depending on who the moral actor is, then morals are subjective. There's no objectivity to it, right? Objective, 2 + 2 is always 4. So I don't see how you're getting around this very, very simple fact that if a moral actor performs an action that we claim is moral, it doesn't matter who we substitute in for the moral actor, whether it's God, a human being, or an orangutan. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. The difference in the point I was trying to communicate is that the whole purpose of creation is for creation to learn to recognize and to choose the goodness of God by itself. So when you say the wholeness of creation, do you mean that that rocks are supposed to? Because rocks are a part of creation. Or are you just talking about moral actors like humans? I'm an idealist. I believe that the world is fundamentally of consciousness, and matter is a derivative. So all things are a product of consciousness that will ultimately align with God.
So rocks have consciousness? Do we want to go off on that tangent? I don't think we do.
We don't. I promise the whole other thing. I have a totally different line of questions, Jim, if you're okay with it, unless you're in the middle of something. I don't want to derail you.
Go ahead.
So really quickly, I mean, Tommi,
he still hasn't addressed. Yeah.
No, he hasn't, and I'm hoping to attach it from the other direction just for a second here. Tommi, is the Bible true and accurate and like a fair depiction of God?
It depends on how it's interpreted. I think we need to be careful, especially the Old Testament.
Is a plain text reading of the Bible an appropriate way to understand God?
No.
Okay, so then you would disagree, I'm sure, where in Exodus it repeatedly says that Pharaoh wanted to let the Israelites go, but God hardened his heart so that he would not let them go, which would be a direct violation of the Pharaoh's free will. I'm assuming you don't think that that is an accurate interpretation of that part of the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's try a different character. That's why I asked, all right? Let's try a different character. What about the character of Satan? Is Satan real, do you believe?
Yeah, I remember this question from a previous. So we have to clarify, if when we talk about Satan, we're talking about something like the spirit of sin, or we're talking about evil embodied?
I'm talking about, maybe you have a different understanding of me. I'm talking about the common Christian understanding of the word Satan being another name for the fallen angel, Lucifer, the devil, the person who was at the beginning, who knew God, was created by God, met God personally, rebelled against God, and is now in charge of hell. That guy.
Sure. I mean, I have some issues with that characterization, but let's grant it for now because they're not relevant.
Okay. Sure. So my question then, and maybe you have a way of, like, to tell me why I'm misinterpreting this, is that, like, the big thing that Jim and I seem to be hung up on here is that God could interfere. God could show up and tell people, hey, quit murdering each other. It's not fun. It's not a cool thing to do. God could physically intervene. God could intervene just like as a parent scolding us. God could come in and say something. There's a million ways that God could handle the situation of evil in the world without violating free will. And you seem to think that there's an issue there. My question to you is, does Lucifer have free will? The dude knew God personally, knows beyond anybody's, like, understanding who and what God is. Satan understands God better than you ever could hope to, and knows God's rules and knows God's personality and knows the punishments and the judgments and everything, and still makes the free choice to rebel and to turn against him. Why would God not afford us the same liberty as he affords Satan to come down here and say, listen, y'all, genocide's bad, quit doing it, and we can choose whether or not we want to align ourselves with this God that we now know for sure exists?
I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of Satan. I think it's impossible for any rational spirit to fully know God and to go against God. Whenever anyone, human or otherwise, goes against God, it's either because of some ignorance or because they're enslaved to some vice or something like that. And the same.
So
whose fault is the ignorance?
Oh, that's a good question. I was going to say, you're saying that Satan does not know God then?
Not fully, or at least he's not.
Whose fault is that?
Cool. So then there's your issue that I also have, and that's exactly what Jim's asking, is like, who's at, if Satan, the dude who met God in person and was there at the beginning, who witnessed, this whole thing, who was the birth of the creation and all this, Satan is the best possible chance that we can have, along with the other angels, I suppose, to be as close as possible to God, and still doesn't understand enough to make the right choices. What fucking hope do we have, Tommy? How is it fair for God to judge us when we know him so much worse than Satan, and Satan still can't make the right choice?
I don't think we know him much less than Satan. I think Satan was in a similar position when he went against God.
Whose fault is our ignorance?
Ignorance is a result of privation that comes from creation ex nihilo.
So whose fault is the ignorance, though? God's, right? God has chosen to have us remain ignorant. Because God is omnipotent, which means he has the power, and he's omniscient, so he knows we're ignorant. Mm-hmm. And he knows that our ignorance is going to force us to make bad choices, or to allow us to make bad choices.
I think it forces us.
And he's omnipotent, so he has the power to educate us. Or see, we're still coming back to the same thing, right? We still come back to the same problem. God is omnipotent, therefore he has the power to educate us in such a way that we would never want to choose evil. And without taking away any choice from us at all, God has that power, because God is also omniscient, which means he knows our hearts and our minds. And so he can make this. And it doesn't matter our intelligence level. It doesn't matter anything other than God has the power. So it's God's fault we're ignorant.
Yes.
So again, we come back to that if we're ignorant because of God, then God is either not omnipotent, not omniscient, or not omnibenevolent, right? We're right back to the same three knots that you claim are true. No matter how you slice this cake, it keeps coming up. God, the tri-omni God cannot exist. It's logically impossible. With the world as it is today, with the universe as it is, as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Yeah.
The process you described of God helping us know the truth and not be ignorant, that is what the process of creation is that we are going through right now. But that learning can't be imposed.
But it's not benevolent. But it's not benevolent. Right? Because right now there are people dead before Christ was born who never had the chance to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat that?
There are people dead before Christ was born who've never had a chance to learn this. There are people dying all over the world who don't know any of this, right? There are Buddhists and there are Islamic folks and there are Jainists and, all these people all around the world who are dying without knowing anything because God has chosen to not do the benevolent thing, or he doesn't know this is happening, or he doesn't have the power to change it.
It's not impossible for those people to do good.
I'm not saying it's
right,
impossible.
But it is impossible. But it is impossible for them to go to heaven because they have not confessed with their mouths that Jesus is Lord, or whatever the weird scripture is. So because these people live in ignorance and die in ignorance of God, they will not go to heaven. So
I'm a universalist. I believe everyone will ultimately be saved. Everyone will come to recognize the truth.
So then there's no point in doing good. If we're all going to be saved, there's no point in doing good? Did you just say that?
Doing good.
Well, that's the effect of what you just said.
Has intrinsic value. So first, two things. Good has intrinsic value. And if you live your life doing very bad things and only later have a change of heart and choose the good, that will be very painful for you to recognize all the evil stuff you've done.
Okay.
But that's still not benevolent.
Because it's intrinsic.
Right?
Valuable.
Allowing people to choose evil, knowing they're going to feel bad later, that is not benevolent.
Good. No.
The alternative is not giving them choice.
No, it's not. Now you're saying your God's not omnipotent.
Right. That's it. We've been trying to make it very clear this entire time. There are plenty of options God has available to him that could help us to understand him, to understand good, to do all these things, and would not result in the violation of our free will, and wouldn't doom us to an eternity of damnation or of whatever heaven is or anything like that. It's just at the end of the day, I can't get past this concept that the free will of the rapist is more important than the protection of the victim, because eventually the rapist will feel bad someday, and that's morality. And it's not good enough for me. This God is not good enough for me. So, Tommi, it's been 23 minutes and we've got several other calls. I think it's about time we move on, but I encourage you to call us back sometime if you want to talk about this more. So far, you have not changed my mind, at least, that this God is any less monstrous than I thought it was, if indeed it is real at all. But I do appreciate your time. You've been a very pleasant person to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely, Tommi. And you've offered us nothing new.
I respect the rejection of God.
All right. Take care, Tommi. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and he offered us nothing new.
He did, and
the thing is, this argument goes back prior, it goes all the way back to the Greeks, and some, Epicurus. And so it's not a new argument by any stretch of the imagination. And like most of the arguments for God, they predate Christianity in many cases. So yeah, nothing new there.
No, unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. Really quickly, before we move on, I swear to Glob, dude, I'm going to figure this out where I make sure I do the job. We have announcements between calls that I'm supposed to say. And the first one is this. All right. We got, exciting news about a thing that's going on. Play the thing with Sophia. Go.
Calling
Go,
all
Sophia.
free thinkers. We are excited to announce that the ACA is launching its first ever fundraising campaign, Amplify ACA, in partnership with Amplify Austin. This is your chance to expand our impact by making your voices heard and supporting the shows that you love.
We invite you to join us on March 5th starting at 6 p.m. We're going to be doing a 24-hour fundraising event and camp out live at the Free Thought Library in Austin, Texas. We've got a great show in the works, a whole variety hour with our hosts doing different things, not just taking calls like you're used to, but we're going to have the fun facts and playing some games and lots of different activities. So be sure to join us from that. Again, it's going to be really exciting, and we're looking forward to having as many people involved as we possibly can.
Donating is easy on amplifyatx.org. Just search the word atheist and click the donate button. Follow us on our socials for more information.
And this is important. We want to be able to amplify the voices of reason and compassion worldwide. So we ask you, please, donate on Amplify Austin Day to make a real difference.
You should donate just because Jamie told you to. That beautiful bastard gave you a direct order. And how could you say no to that face? Thank you so much, Ben, Sophia, and Jamie, for that incredible commercial. This is our first ever major fundraising campaign, and we need your help to make it a success. So mark your calendars for March 5th at 6 p.m. for our fundraising kickoff party and 24-hour-long live stream. Come down to the Free Thought Library if you're in Austin. Join us online via the Atheist Experience channel. Make a plan to donate and amplify the ACA. Also, if you like what we do, you can become a member of our Patreon. Given to our Patreon ensures our ability to continue to produce the content that you love. You can also become a channel member for as little as 99 cents a month. Just click the join button down below the video, or you can buy some merch at tiny.cc/merch ACA. And also, last but not least, a big shout out to the crew who make this show possible. The crew are magical, wonderful, beautiful, fantastic people, and I love them all very much. Look at them. Look at how great they are. With that, we've got so many calls left. Do you see any that you like? Because I'm looking down at line 15 and also maybe line 3.
Yeah, line 15 looks like it's just a continuation of what we've already started. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, either one of those is fine.
Let's talk to line 15. Let's continue on where we're at. Let's talk to Benjamin, pronouns he, him, calling in from Alligator Lips, who wants to talk about the problem of free will a little bit more. Basically saying that Tommy's call didn't really answer the question in the way that he wanted. So, Benjamin, you are on AXP with Forrest and Jim. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. I tried to call last week, but I couldn't get on because it was kind of late. I'm not sure how much
That's okay.
I got left, but
we've got about an hour left, and we've got a bunch of people who won't get on today as well.
Well, I had a question about theism. So I talked to some people last week, and they said I would pretty much be an atheist, but I'm not really sure. So I was going to kind of ask on that. And then also, I was going to put a spin on this. So if Lucifer, since, y'all brought that up, but if Lucifer was to step in instead of God, Lucifer, from my perspective at least, has just as much knowledge or possibly more knowledge and is just as powerful as God. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that whole problem with the tri-omni God in the first place.
That's something we hear a lot when we talk about the tri-omni God and the problem of evil. People say, well, Satan is interfering with this world. And it's like, okay, so is Satan more powerful than God? Because if not, then God should be able to stop him as a loving and infinitely powerful being. But he doesn't. So either Satan's part of the plan or Satan has some ability that God can't control. Like, there's an issue here.
Yeah. Well, see, also, if that is true, it would actually disprove Christianity, or at least tear a hole in it. And I, in my mind, and I thought about this before while y'all was talking about the Lucifer thing to the other guy. And just a hypothetical, just to, kind of get an idea across. If Lucifer was to intervene and try to help humanity instead of hurt humanity, and in my opinion, not everybody on earth can be saved anyway, because some people just can't be saved. So if Lucifer was to step in as a good guy, hypothetical here, and decide, what, I'm going to go ahead, because Lucifer, technically speaking, can't do anything without God allowing it anyway. So if you go that route, Lucifer's powers come from God, that's what most people would say. But if Lucifer was to step in and try to help humanity and save, the people that he could save, would that blow a hole in as far as, does that prove God wrong as far as God being a good God? Or does that just, with that, people, they might say, oh, well, God allowed him to help humanity. But then you also have the problem of not being able to save everyone anyway. So I was just going to get y'all's opinion on that. And then also try to figure out if I'm considered a theist or an atheist.
So first of all, I think you're asking the wrong people these questions. You need to be asking yourself these questions, because at the end of the day, we don't think this shit's real. And so if Satan stepped in and did good things, cool. I don't like the guy either. If he is truly omnipotent, but if he isn't, then that is not a big concern to me. And it doesn't save God from his moral responsibility. We tried to talk to Tommi about this, but we kind of got derailed. It's just at the end of the day, the buck stops with God. No matter what, the end of the responsibility is God. If you believe in the Garden of Eden story, God knew what was happening. God, knew what was going to happen. God put that tree there on purpose, knowing what was going to take place. God put the serpent in the garden. God knew what the serpent was going to do. God, you just said you can't save everybody. Presumably there are people out there that will never be saved, and God makes them anyway, knowing that they're going to go to hell. You could take the universal approach that Tommi said and said, oh, well, we should just allow everybody into heaven. But then what the hell is the point of this existence in the first place if it's not some divine test? Or if there is an afterlife, why don't we just die to go there? Go ahead.
Well, also, if God was to let everyone into heaven, in my personal opinion, I think that Earth is going to become the new, middle ground, so to speak. But if God was to let everyone, if God snapped his fingers and made everyone fall dead and just brought everybody into heaven, then what would the point of hell be at that point? So, I mean,
and why does a God that's supposed to be all loving have a hell in the first place? What part of infinite unconditional love involves the threat of torture? It just doesn't make any sense. So to answer your question about whether or not you're a theist or an atheist. Yeah. To answer your question about whether or not you're a theist or an atheist, it sounds like you are a theist if this is what you're struggling with. I would say you're an atheist the second you say, you know what, this doesn't exist. That is the real end of whether you like God or don't like God or do or don't agree with God or anything like that has no bearing. The question of whether you're a theist or an atheist is whether or not you believe this God exists. And if you agree with us that there's no evidence for this God and there's a lot of strong logical arguments against it, then you would say that it doesn't exist and we call you an atheist.
So I was going to say this real quick before I forget. The fact that there is a hell disproves the question of God being all loving. He can't be all loving if he created hell. So
exactly.
The other thing too is that now me personally, I believe in Lucifer. I believe in God. I believe in heaven. I believe in hell. I also believe in Limbo. I take kind of Gnostic approach, which not many people are Gnostics anymore. But when I got into this last week, or I think the week before, with Dr. Ahmedi, or whatever, the Indian guy, and somebody else, and they was basically,
Armin?
well, if I thought, yeah, and so they was telling me, I can be an atheist and still believe in the afterlife, which I told them. I said, I don't worship God anyway. I do believe in God, but I think he's an asshole. And so, and as far as afterlife goes, I believe in, afterlife in a sense, but I don't worship any of that. And the only reason I know about limbo and stuff, I've had, personal experiences and stuff like that. And I hang on to limbo because I have a hope that my family is still, somewhat watching me or whatever. But the other thing too, and the doctor guy brought this up. He said, he lost his family to cancer, and I lost mine to cancer as well. And I made the point to him that, I'm holding on to the limbo idea, and probably the other stuff too, because I want there to be an afterlife after death, so I can be with my family and people that I've lost over the decades. But the other thing too, and back to the hypothetical thing, if Lucifer has just as much power as God does, then that already, and plus the fact that, if God created everything in that sense, then God also created hell, which means that he's not all loving. On the other hand,
Right.
he doesn't.
Let me can I back you up a little bit, Benjamin? Because you said something that I find kind of interesting. I think you said that you believe in limbo and heaven because you want it to be true. Did you say that?
No, I've had personal experiences with limbo and heaven. I've died a few times and I've seen the stuff, but
how do you know that it was heaven or limbo and not brain chemicals doing brain chemical things?
Well, when I was in limbo, it looked like limbo. I mean, the surroundings. So, like, for example, I could see stuff that was close to me, and it looked like I was surrounded in a fog. And
people who are on hallucinogens will say the same thing.
Yeah, I've
people
been in
who
that
are
place.
low on oxygen will say the same thing.
Yeah, it sounds to me, Benjamin, like you've got this deep-seated belief that you're holding on to for personal reasons because it's more comfortable and it's more convenient. And I think you're seeing the cracks and the flaws and the problems. You even said, I believe in a God. I think he's an asshole. Like, it sounds like you already have this concept of why this shit doesn't make sense and why it doesn't work, but you have some personal reason to hold on to it. You say you've been to limbo, been to heaven, but as Jim's pointing out, lots of people of lots of different faiths claim to have been to lots of different extra planar, extra dimensional places before, after, outside of life and all these things. And like, it doesn't make them any more true than what you're saying. You can't rule out that you were hallucinating. You can't rule out that your brain was starved of oxygen. You can't rule out that there was a gas leak. You can't rule out that you were in having a psychotic break. You can't rule out the idea that the government had some multinational, multi-billion-dollar conspiracy to slip you LSD for the sole purpose of fucking with you, so you would call into this show and distract us all from whatever's going on in Washington, D.C. at this moment. Like, there's a million reasonable explanations, even unreasonable explanations, that are more likely than magic. And so, like, at the end of the day, man, I think I would definitely call you a theist, but I think you would agree with me if you really sat down and hashed it out that you don't have a good reason to be a theist. You don't have a good reason to believe in anything supernatural. You have comfortable reasons. And I hope that you will be as critical to those as you are being justifiably critical to the concept of this God in the very first place.
Well, my reasons is pretty much personal experience, and I can't demonstrate the personal experience because personal experience is necessarily, first person. But at the same time, and then
let me address that with Yeah, let me give you a personal experience I had. Just to cut all the details really short. When I was in the Army, me and a buddy went to go start a test on whether we could diagnose a problem with the radar or not while we were going through training. He said a bunch of Latin-sounding words, waved his hands. We both laughed. We went to turn the radar on, and the radar rotated backwards, making a huge groaning sound. Now, this radar is not supposed to. It should be physically impossible and electrically impossible to have this thing rotate backwards, and yet it did. We shut it down. We found no reason for it to do it. Our instructors found no reason to do that. Should I believe that my buddy cast a spell to infect the radar with a demon? Because that's what he says he did.
I would,
even though he says he doesn't know what the words are. Should I believe that based on that personal experience?
well, if you conclude that there's a spiritual thing involved, you would compare the reasons. So, like, it's not just that I've had personal experience.
Right. I don't know what spiritual reasons even means. I can't detect anything spirit. Why should I conclude anything other than that was weird? We don't know why that happened.
You would need more knowledge to conclude that the thing was spirit. But,
yeah, I agree.
And but my point was that, and I have a lot of knowledge, but my point that I was going to say also, you know, if Lucifer is on Earth now, and I've been watching, keeping up with current events, and if, you know, Trump, and not to get political here because I don't really care one way or the other, but if Trump and Putin and all these other countries don't, you know, if they want to make peace, good, but if Lucifer is actually, you know, the one that pulls the strings behind the curtain, so to speak, in the shadows, they would have to go through him to create peace in the first place, because technically he's the king of the earth anyway, at least according to
it's just a huge
whole lot
amount
of
of
coming
if.
off of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the if is doing all the hard work for you, Benjamin. Benjamin, it's been 13 minutes. I feel like we haven't gotten anywhere, and we got plenty of other people waiting. I just want to reiterate, like, what you're telling me is the same thing that I've heard from a bazillion other Christians and Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and everybody else who believes all sorts of things for the exact same reasons. And none of them work. None of them stand up. And I wish that you would be as critical of your own beliefs as you are critical of the God that you unfortunately believe in. I also encourage you to start giving a shit about politics one way or the other, because that's very important. But that's beside the point. Anyway, Benjamin, we're going to move on, but I appreciate your call, man.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah, I'm sorry if that was cut short. I just didn't feel like we were moving anywhere.
Yeah. He was going in circles, and I didn't know where the circles were going.
Yeah, it's nice dude. Genuine. I have nothing against him. Nice guy. No. But just I feel like he needs to critically analyze himself a little bit more. Really quickly, we got some super chats here. Number one here comes from Bagel Bites, who sent $6.99 of their colorful ass Canadian money to say, I think a radioactive cow licked Forrest's head. Is that how you spelled my name too? It's written on the bottom of the screen. Giving him his super brain powers. I don't like any part of that. Keep that to yourself. You don't know me or what my parents were or what their cow situation was. Bagel Bites also sent $2.79 more to say, I will never financially recover from this. That's fantastic. Luke Riley sent $2 British money to say, did someone mention cheese? No, they didn't, and they never will. Keep your crown dollars to yourself. Pillowpunk sent 5 good, honest, hardworking American freedom dollars to say, does it even matter if a libertarian free will is real or not? We experience making judgments and choices either way, so what's the big deal? That is a good question. Roger Winzel sent $20. My goodness, the patience of these hosts in the light of some of these callers is as or more miraculous than anything found in the Bible. That's very kind of you to say.
Yes.
Infinite Vacation sent $4.99 and a super sticker of. Is this okay? The super sticker is described in text here as a video game controller poses triumphantly in between the words "critical hit." How does a controller pose triumphantly? What is it? Is it like a joystick? It
goes back to everything in the universe has consciousness.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Miranda Rensberger sent $10. Deeply important question. Forrest, why does your stuffed uterus has eyes? Because it's accurate. And all uteri have eyes, as do all ovaries. Look at how tiny and cute that little dude is. And they're magnetically attached because they're not actually attached to these fimbriae here. They're just suspended by uterine ligaments. They're cute little guys. By ovarian ligaments, pardon me. Let's put that. Stay there. Wow. That was a gift, by the way, from Giant Microbes. Super nice people. And then Laren sent $2 to say Limbo is misspelled Jimbo, where Jim rules. Love that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Although I do hate Jimbo. So
everybody hashtag Jimbo. He loves it. It's great.
You're in the mood today, Forrest. You're getting all kinds of stuff.
I am here to make this channel a living hell, and I've been doing it for years. We asked also in the chat, we asked you guys if you could pick the next call, what would you pick? And it was a close race, but you guys wanted to talk to somebody who says that we are born believers, and so that's exactly what we're going to do. We've got Cameron, pronouns he, him, calling in all the way from the frozen northern wasteland that is Canada, who says that humans throughout cultures are born with a thought of God. We'll talk about why that matters. Cameron, you're on the line with Forrest and Jim. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm going to be arguing for more of a deistic, monotheistic God. So I'm Christian, but I feel like that would be a bit more complicated. You'd have to come at it a lot of different ways. But for the sake of argument, more monotheistic, deistic. That sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of silly I have to say this. Well, I'm a Christian who's not a creationist. I think that's silly. I'm Presbyterian. I don't know if you know the things that come along with that, but it's more, I'll say, progressive in some ways. But I believe that throughout cultures, throughout the world, really, that humans, it's a natural thing that we yearn for God, that we yearn for an afterlife. Now, just because we want something doesn't mean it's true. But through evolution, through natural selection, we keep that existence of God. I don't know why we would keep it if religion is false, if it harms people, if it's all these terrible things. I feel like it does a lot of good things to believe in God, not just because, I want to, but I feel like it's true that God implanted us with that natural human belief in him. Do you have any takes on that or anything?
I have a huge amount of problems with what you just said. I'm currently taking notes. Jim, do you want me to start or do you want to?
The only thing I'm really going to say now is go Gadget Forrest.
Yeah.
Is this your...
let me just put this thing. So name of God. There we go. Got my notes here. So first of all, you talk about this evolutionary reason and like how things change. Over the course of evolution, we have maintained this concept of God. What you were describing, as far as I can understand it, is this there's a couple of phenomena here. Number one is that humans are really good at these things called epiphania and pareidolia, which are psychological phenomena that we are able to derive meaning from meaningless data, see things that aren't really there and try to like make sense of things that really just fundamentally make no sense. It's the reason why you see shapes in clouds. It's the reason why you see faces in things that don't actually have faces, but they have two spots here and a spot in the middle. And so it looks like something. It's the reason why we try to derive meaning from dreams or from events. It's the reason why we have so many logical fallacies. I drank water and then I got sick. Therefore, the water must have been the thing that made me sick, just because that's the way our minds work. We find these patterns, we create these patterns, we create meaning where there isn't really meaning. We do it all the time. That fundamentally leads into this concept of God as well, where we're saying, I know that if I rub sticks together, I make fire, but then this flash of light came out of the sky and made fire on the ground. There must have been some guy up there rubbing real big sticks together. And that must have been what this is. We ascribe agency to things that we don't understand. And that there is an evolutionary reason you can make behind that, because false positives are safer than false negatives in survival situations. If you hear a rustling in the bushes and you run away and it's the wind, you got some extra cardio that day. If you don't run away and it was a lion, then you are lunch. And so there's always an impetus, there's always selection pressure for assuming that there's something when there isn't. And so that kind of, for me, sums up like the evolutionary history of like these beliefs, and it doesn't give any credibility to the truth of the beliefs, as you can demonstrate by the vast number of these beliefs and how incompatible they are. And I know you're not arguing for one in particular. You said specifically you're arguing for a deistic idea, but like it kind of falls apart then. And it also falls apart when you take into account all the other things that like every human culture seems to have concepts of that certainly you wouldn't be calling in to argue about. You're not calling to argue about ghosts. You're not arguing to call about a spirit world. You're not calling to argue about Bigfoot and the Jersey Devil and the Loch Ness Monster and all the other, evil, the Wendigos and all these creatures that exist in the folklores of different cultures. Those certainly don't exist. You're not worried about, whatever monster the Australian Aboriginals believed in, because there's some horrible monster in every single culture. It's just a monster. It's a boogeyman, and you're not concerned about it. And yet you're willing to extend that to God because it's something that's culturally comfortable for you to do. And then the last thing you said, and then I'll shut up and let you respond to all of this. The last thing you said is that religion and belief does a lot of good. Well, it also does a shitload of bad, because if somebody can make you believe absurdities, they can also make you commit atrocities. And so the amount of horrific things that have been done in the name of gods, in the name of religions, in the name of popes and priests and emperors who have told the people that if you go out and slaughter enough people who don't look like you, that you will gain absolution and paradise and virgins and all these other things. All of those things, I think, are more noteworthy than the acts of charity and service that people do in the names of God, because there is not a single good thing that an atheist can't do out of the goodness of their heart that a religious person can't do in the name of God. But there are plenty of fucking evil things that atheists would never do in the name of atheism that you can absolutely demonstrably see Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and everybody else doing in the name of their various gods and religions. That is my rebuttal to you, sir. What do you think about all those things?
Yeah, 100%. I think, a lot of religion just as a base, as a fellowship, 100%. I feel like that's in any ways, not just because the belief in God. You look at the communists in China, like Mao, you look at Stalin, they're not God, but they're their own leaders. But I would say, you gave me a lot of things to go at. I'll come at the religion is evil thing that you said. I agree with that in some ways. A lot of evil is like, oh, my God is blah, 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 blah. But I feel like that supports my argument. If it's evil, if it's terrible, if you kill your brother because he believes in the river god and you believe in the sand god, why would we believe in God? Why would we have inherent?
You have Christians killing each other for
all the time.
Yeah, Christians killing each other all the time over even dumber things, right?
Mm-hmm. There's over 40,000 denominations of Christianity alone.
Yes. I'm just trying to say, do you know what I'm saying? That just because it does evil, it would make evolutionary less probable. to keep that
No.
trait, to keep that God gene.
No, it
No,
doesn't,
no,
because at the end of the day, it's rooted in tribalism, which clearly was evolutionarily advantageous at a time when we were loose bands of people that needed to be able to stick together and like defend each other and protect each other from other people that wanted to come and raid our villages and things. Like there's arguments to be made that both that I do and don't support from a bioanthropological perspective. There are arguments to be made all over this that don't rely on, therefore, actually, there must be some fucking guy up there that whipped up the universe like a space wizard. Like you don't need to take that jump. You can make logical arguments rooted in what we do actually positively know about cultural anthropology and biological evolution. Like I said, things that I do and don't agree with that are more valid and more meaningful and more substantive than actually the madness that they believe in was real. So I don't think that this supports your point at all. I think that there are plenty of better explanations that you could argue for that just don't rely on magic.
And do you know who the Paraha tribe in the Amazon forest is?
No, sir.
Oh, then you should go look them up because they have no concept of a god. You should also go investigate Buddhism because Buddhism also Buddhists don't believe in a god or god concept. And I would make the argument that Shintoism does not believe in a god concept and that some Native American beliefs also don't have a god concept. So when you say that all humans have a god concept, you need to do more than just listen to whatever apologist told you that. You need to go and do some anthropological studies of people because there's two groups for sure who don't agree with you of humans, which means your entire argument falls apart just based on the evidence.
Can I, not to pin you down on one belief, but with Hinduism, as far as I know, they have concepts of an afterlife. They have concepts of a hell. They have
We're talking about the concept of a god, which is what you said, that all humans have the concept of a god or want to believe in a god. And I have just named two groups of humans who do not.
Did I say God and afterlife, or did I just say God?
You just said God.
I'm not saying you're wrong. Oh, sorry. I more lumped those two together. But I would say also with afterlife. I'll look at what tribes did you say? I did Hinduism. What's the other ones you said, sir?
Paraha, Buddhism. No, the Paraha, which is like Purana, only Paraha. There's an H instead of an N. And then Buddhism definitely doesn't have the concept of a god. Whether or not Buddhism actually has a concept of an afterlife and a heaven and a hell or not, is open to interpretation. I would say that they don't.
It also like, even if they did, like that doesn't do anything for me because like you personally lumping together the concept of God and the concept of an afterlife doesn't mean that other cultures do that or that it is a necessary constituent part of this belief. It's just, once again, it's the exact same thing as the beginning of your argument, which is this is something that you particularly find comfortable and you feel like you can just smear across the entirety of humanity and call it good. And what you're doing is it's not really, I'm not trying to insult you. It is not really ethnocentrism because you're not saying that this is like the right way to be a human. You're utilizing your cultural heuristics and your religious understanding and kind of making this blanket statement about all of humanity, past and present. And that's just not appropriate to do. And I guarantee you there are plenty of cultures out there that would, even if they had a concept of a god or an afterlife, they are very different than what you would consider a god or an afterlife, and that wouldn't work for you. So it's just, that's really, and again, I'm not trying to be a dick to you because you've been very polite, but like when I was studying anthropology, that was like literally the first lesson was get out of the dualisms of your culture if you were trying to understand, especially ancient humans, because it just doesn't work. It's not, their brains did not work the way that yours does, and nor would yours work if you were in that culture for them. So overall, Cameron, I'm going to leave you the last word, and then I'm going to move on because we got a couple more calls I want to try to crank through while we have a little bit of time left.
Yeah. What were you saying? I would say that obviously, like, the indigenes wouldn't know, or like, I don't know, ancient Slavics wouldn't know what the Trinity is. Their minds would blow up if you tried to explain it to them. It's less of the.
As would yours if they tried to explain their religion to you.
And as would first century Christians, if you tried to explain the Trinity to them,
That's also
they would
true.
burn you as a heretic.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's a different conversation. I know Ignatius of Antioch believed in more of a Trinitarian view, but that's I don't want to branch off into that. But I would say with our current conversation that I would agree that it's hard to just say this is a blanket view, like, oh, you have to believe in God, that just because we do now and that other cultures have similar concepts. But I feel like that similar concepts, that naturalistic yearning for God, is something that's not as vague as you're trying to show. Not in a rude way, obviously.
No, of course. And I would argue that there is no naturalistic yearning for God, as you are claiming. There is simply a naturalistic curiosity. And where there is curiosity, when we can't find answers because of who we are as humans, we're really good at coming up with answers when we don't have a good one. And because logical fallacies exist, because it takes training to use your mind properly, early humans, our first attempts at explaining the universe around us relied on a lot of magical thinking and a lot of applying agency to things that are natural processes. And because it was our first attempt at explaining the universe, it was also our worst attempt at explaining the universe. And unfortunately, that is a vestigial remnant that lasts with us to this day. So I don't think there's a natural urge to know God. I think there's a natural urge to just know what the hell's going on. And when we don't have a good answer, and when we don't have good education, we come up with magical explanations. And you can see that demonstrated in the sheer number of different religions around the world and the sheer number of different types of each one of those religions. There's 40,000 flavors of Christianity alone. And it's all because it's just what's more comfortable and more convenient and more palatable to individual people living within their own worlds, their own heuristics, their own lives, their own cultures, their own comforts, and their own ideals. And then they just apply that to the rest of the universe and declare it natural law, as you are doing here. So, Cameron, I think you are doing the same thing that every other religious person does. You're just being a lot more kind about it. And I appreciate that, but I still encourage you to evaluate this a little further.
Thank you. I'll look up, you said you wanted to go on to other calls. I'll call back another time about something else. Maybe the Trinitarian view. That seems like it would be fun. But
that'd be fun, yeah.
Raha.
Another logically impossible thing.
Something else you would? Yeah. Is there something else you would want me to look up or look into?
I got nothing for you right now that wouldn't just be like a textbook or some dumb shit. So I'm not going to give you anything right now.
Yeah, or something very generic like go study other cultures and get to know their religions before you make claims like all or every human believes or wants to believe a thing. Yeah, because as soon as you say the word every, all, or none, or nobody, or any of these absolutes, you should just assume you're wrong when you say that, because all you need is one example to be wrong. And if you're building conclusions off of that claim that everyone or all or none, any of those absolutes, then your entire argument falls apart and you're left with nothing but rags.
That is the truth, not only in anthropology, but in just in biology in general. Absolutely. Anyway, Cameron, I appreciate your call. I appreciate you waiting for so long, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Please do call us back sometime, okay?
Oh, no problem. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Take care. What a nice dude. We've got, let me see here. Do we have more? Yes, we do. We have more super chats, and then I'm going to go on to the next thing. I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to do better at my job of reading the things between calls. Omega Weapon sent $5. Creationists don't get the creation and causation necessarily requires space-time in order to happen in the first place to even be coherent. No, but what you don't understand, Omega Weapon, is Jesus something. Cartoon Hero 1986 said, I don't know how Forrest does these back-to-back call-in shows back-to-back in the same day and night and keep his sanity. You assume I brought some with me to begin with. I've got a show immediately after this. Philip Mitchell sent $20. I was talking to this glowing cow, and he said that Forrest, is that, let me see what's on the screen for a second. Is that how you spelled it there as well? My name is on the bottom of the screen, y'all. What's going on? That Forrest's head tasted like cinnamon. You don't know that for sure. That is a faith-based claim. And I come try it. Maybe I'll be in the
Careful what
cruise.
you ask for, Forrest. Don't ask someone to do that.
I'm going to be in the bat cruise this year, and someone's going to come lick my fucking head. I don't know what I'm going to do. Nero sent $10. The Paraha tribe of Brazil does not have a concept of God, and they are not born with one. It is a naturally atheistic tribe because it was separated from greater society. Yeah, they have like animism. They believe that like everything has a natural spirit, but there's no like higher power. Which is a great example of like the diversity of like spiritual concepts, because that's the idea that everything has this animistic spirit is very close to Tommi's argument of idealism, as much as it would probably be to, an idealist chagrin to say. Bagel Bite says at 279, Forrest, we're there. Now we're even. Silly autocorrect. You put an extra R in there. Forrest. I love that. Laren Misha Sedai sent $2. Pareidolia, where the female reproductive system has eyes. Nero sent another $5. Since Jim beat my super chat read, I'll add, when the Paraha were told about Jesus, they rejected as soon as they found out nobody has met Jesus. It's a good reason to reject it.
Yeah.
And finally, Maximilian sent 25 entire dollars. Thank you both for being here and for your time and dedication. And then they sent some cool emojis. That's awesome. Thank you very much for all of those lovely super chats. I appreciate them sincerely. They're all very cool of you.
Amen.
We did another poll, and it was another close race. It was tied 31% for faith is flawed, but so is logic, or Forrest should retire his question everything t-shirt. Because we are tied, Jim, I will let you be the tiebreaker. Which one do you want to do?
Let's find out why you should retire your question everything t-shirt. Because I think I know where this call is going to go.
Me too. I'm going to take bets. Hold on a second. Wait a second. I'm going to just write down. I'm going to make two bets. It's either about this, but more likely about this. Okay. I have made my predictions. You want to make predictions too?
I am now. I'm putting it into our little behind the scenes chat.
Okay.
All right.
I've made two predictions.
Let's see if we got it.
Yeah. Okay. We have different predictions. I made two predictions. You made one. And I think I'm going to say my second one. I'm going to put a little star next to it. I think it's actually this one, but we will see. All right. We're going to talk to Mike. No pronouns given. Calling in from Scratchy Crabs, who says that I should retire my Question Everything t-shirt. Mike, you are on AXP with Forrest and Jim. How are you doing?
Hey, good. How are you guys doing? And I love the fact you're placing a bet on this. That's awesome. So
I want to know what it's all about. Yeah, I've never had a bad day, man. I'm feeling great today. So, okay, settle the debate. Why should I retire my Question Everything t-shirt?
All right. Well, I got a couple of reasons, but mostly, okay, set the stage here. We got Forrest is an influencer. All right. And a good one.
I hate that name, but thank you.
They are. So you're an influencer, and just like Oprah and Beyonce, I think your sponsors are sending you money, and then you're doing talking points. And the reason I bring it up is you're talking about the illegal aliens, undocumented, and handing out cards and all that. And I thought that was really odd, and it just kind of it was like, wow, why would you even bring that up? It was just going right down the talking points as far as the Democratic Party goes, I guess, even though the election's over. But that, I just kind of perked my interest. I was like, well, that's weird. I mean, I always, thought you agreed with it, but that was very specific, not very useful either, because if you give them a card and the ICE people can't get in, then they're going to watch the place and come back later with a warrant, and then they're going to get, I mean, it just makes no sense. So anyway, so that's what piqued my interest, is it looks like you're getting sponsors, not here, but somewhere.
And that's why I should retire my question everything t-shirt, is because I'm paid to have the opinions that I'm espousing?
You're an influencer, and you're influenced by your sponsors, just like Oprah and Beyonce were influenced to, yes.
Damn it. Well,
Yeah,
that was
we were
neither
all
of my
wrong.
guesses. Yeah, damn it. All right. Well, that sucks.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Well, no. I was betting that it was either about creationism, that I'm not questioning evolution, or it was transphobia and that I'm not questioning trans. Because that's what I wrote down. I put a star next to transphobia. Jim, what did you guess?
I guess that it's because you don't believe in God and you haven't questioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of us are right.
At least it's interesting. At least it's a new thing. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is it true?
Yeah. So
No,
anyway,
it's not true at all.
yeah, you
Very not
haven't
true.
met Forrest, but his opinions are fully formed all on his own. I don't think you could pay him to say something he doesn't believe in.
You can't. In fact, I have so I do get sponsorships for videos and things. I have turned down tens of thousands of dollars worth of sponsorships to be sponsored by and to say things that I don't support and don't agree with. That happens all the time. I have even turned down sponsorships of things that I do like because I wasn't 100% sure about the company or about their mission or whatever else, and I didn't want to attach my name and my credibility to something that I wasn't certain about. So like, yeah, that's simply not true at all. As far as the cards are concerned, those cards I was passing out detail out people's constitutional rights. And yes, if ICE comes back with a warrant and then arrests these people, then that means that they are obeying the Constitution and making sure those people's rights are preserved. Those cards are to remind people that they don't have to talk to agents. They have a Fifth Amendment protection. They don't have to let those agents into their house. They have a Fourth Amendment protection. They don't have to, those people need a warrant in order to enter their home. And that warrant needs to be accurate with detailed, accurate information and be signed by a judge. They can get their own things that look like warrants. It cannot be that. It has to be one. So that's not my personal, I guess my personal opinion is that the Constitution matters and like civil rights matter. And so like, that's what those are about. It's not a Democrat thing. I am not a Democrat. It's just about protecting people's rights under the Constitution and making sure that we aren't rounding up people for speaking a different language in order to scapegoat immigrants, rather than addressing the fact that all of the bullshit that the current administration is doing to try to quote save money could be done in spades. We would have so much more money than the stuff that we have supposedly saved if we would just tax billionaires 1% more. So like, yeah, none of this is Democrat talking points. These are my ideas and my thoughts. I'm not paid to say any of this stuff. So you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I'm afraid. And the only reason I don't wear my Question Everything shirt is because the term Question Everything has been a little bit co-opted by anti-vaxxers, and I don't like it. And so that's all. That's the reason, and that's the reality of the situation, Mike.
All right, but that's interesting. I mean, if you really want to save money, get out of the Ukrainian war. I guess that would be a thing. But you don't.
Well, I think fighting fascism is worth money.
Yeah, so do I.
And
I think standing up to bullies is always a good thing, no matter who the bully is, and that bully is clearly Russia. We have seen this. We have seen this play before. We know how it ends, as recently as the 20th century. So. Yeah, take your right-wing talking points and actually learn something.
Yeah.
So.
And also, if you want to save money, maybe we can stop doing government subsidies of, I don't know, like SpaceX and stuff, where we have literally the richest man in the entire world who is receiving huge amounts of government subsidies and money in order to run his already multi-billion-dollar companies, which he could completely fund all by himself if he wanted to, and also end world hunger, and also end homelessness, and also replace all the water pipes in Flint, Michigan, and also own every sports team ever, and still have more money than he could ever possibly spend on his own. and refuses to pay his fair share in taxes. Maybe instead of defunding schools, maybe instead of taking away school lunches, maybe instead of taking away U.S. aid, maybe instead of taking away foreign aid to countries that need it, maybe instead of talking about which countries we should or shouldn't be supporting in wars where they're fighting for their rights and their existence, maybe instead of blaming poor people and immigrants for the problems of the country, maybe we should just notice the fact that the only actual dangerous minority in the world is billionaires. And if we were to take just a tiny fraction of their gross money that they have, the disgusting hordes of dragon wealth that they sit upon every day as thousands of people starve to death around the world, if we were to tax them just 1%, not only would they not notice, because there's no way, they literally wipe their ass with more money than that, but we could also save a lot of lives and maybe actually have a country worth calling the greatest in the world, because we could provide for people and have decent infrastructure and education. But hey, that's just me, and nobody's paying me to say it. With that, Mike, I'll be honest with you, I'm excited that it wasn't what we thought, but it was still a little disappointing. So we're going to move on to the next call, but I appreciate you calling in sincerely.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, and to end world hunger, the only thing we really need is for Musk to keep his promise, because he made a promise on Twitter that if somebody could give him a number, he would donate that amount of money to end world hunger. And the World Food Bank gave him the number, and whoops.
He did what he always does, which is run away like a little bitch and blame everybody else for his inadequacies. Because when you're a Nepo baby of a freaking another super rich guy who owned an emerald mine in apartheid South Africa, when you are born and raised from suffering, from taking advantage and exploiting human beings, and you are handed great wealth, and you never invented anything, you never made anything new, you just bought out companies from people who were doing great work, and then usually ran them into the ground and made them just 10 times shittier. And your entire skill, your actual one thing that you have going for you, the thing on your business card is, I have money. I don't know, man. It's not worth my time. People like Trump and Musk and they are what weak people think strong people look like. And to me, I find it immensely boring and sad. But for people like Mike, it's easy to assume that my opinion is bought and paid for, because all the politicians he worship, their opinions are bought and paid for. Yeah, and so it's just easy to put that across the board. I don't know, man.
Dr. Richard Carrier has a really good article on his blog about just how profoundly ignorant and dumb Musk is. And it's absolutely wonderful. The guy has he points out, he has absolutely no curiosity about anything. He refuses to change his opinion when the facts counter what his opinion is. I mean, he is just, we talk about Musk safer than we can talk about other folk, but yes.
It's just disappointing that dude's the president now. But here we are. We've got the next call that everybody asked for was this one. It's Patrick, no pronouns given, calling in all the way from Miniature Otters, who says that faith is a flawed method to truth, but so is logic. I can promise you'll have a preference. Let's talk to Patrick. You are on the line with Forrest and Jim. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Number one, you guys are both my favorite hosts, so
thank you. All right,
to talk to you, I appreciate that. Jim, can I ask if I can get an invite to one of your celebrity barbecues? Give you a big old hug.
If I had a celebrity barbecue, yes, you could. But since I don't have them,
okay.
Might be difficult.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a long-time listener, so I wanted to ask that. But yes, okay, so, sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts. I wasn't expecting to get on. I think that kind of the same problem that people point out with faith, I think also applies to logic, right?
Now, when you say logic, when you say logic, Do you mean formal logic where you say things like A and B, A or B, if A then B, that type of formal logic, or do you mean something else by logic?
No, I mean that sort of logic. I guess the point I'm getting to is, if go ahead.
That formal logic is all about determining what is true and false. It is a methodology that has the same rigor as mathematics. So I'm wondering how you get from faith, which is an unjustified belief that may or may not be true, to logic, which we use. And when I say it has the rigor of mathematics, that's not an exaggeration, right? So how do you?
And I understand that. I'm sorry, there's a delay a little bit, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're fine.
Okay. How do I justify that? So the way I kind of stumbled into this, and I'm more asking you guys your opinion on it, is I've heard the argument that because faith can either produce a true or untrue result, it's an unreliable path to truth, correct? I'm not trying to say that that's your guys' argument
very specifically, when we say it's an unreliable path to truth, we mean that as a process for getting to something that is true, it's unreliable. Logic, on the other hand, is reliable to always return either a false or a true value.
And I want to kind of challenge that a little bit, and from the basis. From the basis, so I've done stand-up for quite a number of years, and one of the best descriptions I've heard of a joke, of what a joke is a logical progression to an absurd conclusion. Okay? So if you can make a logical progression that stands, A to B to C, whatever, and arrive at an untruth, or something that is not true, then doesn't that mean that you can use logic to progress to a truth or an untruth? And so therefore it has the same problem as faith?
No, because you're mistaking.
Why not?
You're basically saying that because 1 + 1 = 2, it's the same as faith. Or to put it in logic terms, if P or Q is the same thing as faith. And faith is simply saying, I believe this because I want to believe this, right? I believe in heaven because I want to believe in heaven. There's no evidence. So when you look at logic and we say P and Q, right, we're saying that this statement and this statement both have to be true in order for the whole thing, thing to be true. So we're determining what truth is, whereas faith is claiming what truth is, without any evidence and without any logic. They're not. I think you're actually making a category error, right? Because you're basically saying faith is the same as math, and that's a category error.
I'm not trying to say that. What I'm trying to say is if I can use a logical argument to arrive at an incorrect result,
you can't.
Then
you can't use you can't use a formal logic statement to come to something that isn't correct.
I think what you're like getting caught up on here, Patrick, is that you can make things like that sound like logic, but so like, for example, if I were to say like what do you say, clownfish have gills, and clownfish are fish, therefore fish have gills. Okay, the conclusion is true, but the progression to get there doesn't really work, because I could also say clownfish have stripes and clownfish are fish, therefore all fish have stripes, and that doesn't make any sense, right? So like, you can make something that sounds like a logical argument and then come to a wrong conclusion. You can have something that is like valid in its premise but isn't actually a sound argument. But that's bad logic, and you would learn about that if that's what you're studying. And it sounds like you're saying because you are capable of doing bad logic, therefore logic is bad, or in fact, or is somehow like an issue. And I don't think that's a reasonable position to take.
No, and that's why I kind of wanted to run it by you guys, because it kind of like I fell into this thought, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure out if this is accurate or not. So I wanted to ask you guys about it. So I appreciate you having me on, and I think I think I agree with you. I think I am making that error. So thank you for correcting my thought process on that. I very much appreciate everything you guys do, whether or not we have the same beliefs or not. So I don't know if you want to move on to the next caller, or if
this was actually our last one of the show, and you ended it like beautifully. The problem I have, Patrick, right now is that we've done an entire show and we haven't like gotten upset with a single person. Can you be a dick so we can be mad and end the show?
Fucking corporate shill.
Oh, fuck you idiot! I'm hanging up. Goodbye. Take care, Patrick. Oh, what a great way to end it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally, it's just all nice. Even the one guy who believed silly things about me was pleasant about it. So, like, flip, dude. That's the show, y'all. It's been great. Let me really quickly go through our last super chats because these people paid money, and I'm gonna make sure they get the thing. We got Pibble Punk, who sent $2 to say my two favorite hosts, Jimbo and Forrest. That's awful. That's awful.
$2 back.
Miranda Rensberger sent $10. Hi, Forrest. Fuck off. Artemis sent, we had this one show that still cracks me up to this day. I was on with Armin, and we had this caller who was like, I don't know where that other guy is, Ahmed or something, and then was talking to me, and he was like, I forgot your name, Jeremy or something, and we just signed off. There's like, it's been Ahmed and Jeremy. What a great show. So fucking stupid. Artemis sent $4.99 of British monies. I'm wearing the Question Everything shirt now because it's my absolute favorite. It's my favorite shirt too. I used to wear that shirt all the time, and I stopped wearing it because I got sick of people making the claim I thought that guy was going to make. I got so many comments on TikTok like, you say question everything, but you don't question evolution. Some scientist you are. I'm like, do you really honestly think that we've never? Oh man. Atomic Punk 31 sent $2. Loving this Forrest and Jimbo episode. We've started something terrible, and by we I mean me, and I'm not sorry for it.
As long as it makes everybody laugh, we're okay.
Godwin sent $4.99, if I'm not mistaken. I recall the Barajas' logic and questioning converted the Christian missionary who tried to save their souls to atheism. Look up Kondiaronk, I believe was his name. There's this dude. There's a guy here, and he's a Native American guy here in the U.S. And when like the first like Jesuits and Christians and everybody came over here, I forgot what tribe he was with, but he just tore Christianity apart, tore capitalism apart, like just tore apart like the entire concept of like kings and like everything in all of the same ways that I and many people like me, I'm a socialist, and like lots of socialists like me, just same exact arguments. Lots of anarchists who have anarchist beliefs that I do, same things, because they had this anarchist construct that they believed in. And their framework was just so different, and it's fantastic. It's all written about in this book over here, The Dawn of Everything, The New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wingrove. They talk about the indigenous critique quite a bit in this, and like it's all the exact same arguments that I make today. And let me tell you, when I started reading that book, I was like, just for like 3 chapters, I was just like, I know, right? I'm just screaming at this book like, I get it, yes. It's great. The Connor K9 sent $5. I want Forrest to read me my rights before bed, if you know what I mean. I don't know what you mean, and I don't want
you like me to explain it to you.
Is it man, I'm sure it's like a last rites, like a prayer thing, but in my head it's sexual, and I feel
there
like
you go. That's the way I was taking it. Yeah, it's
absolutely something dirty, and like that's just the nature of the internet, man. You know, like that's part of our job as, I hate this word, influencers, is that at the end of the day, no matter what we do, somebody's rubbing themselves silly for it, and I don't want to be a part of that for you. I'm not here to help you splork it. Sonic Shroom sent $5 they could tax the churches if they want more money. They fucking could, and they fucking should. People Punk
Wait,
sent
aren't you referring to your last comment? Aren't you the guy who made the fingering holes joke in the opening?
Don't at me, Barrows. You don't want this smoke. It's just, that's between me and Jesus. People Punk.
Yeah, I would think that fingering Jesus' holes is quite personal.
Yes, it is. It's my personal faith journey. Sent $5. The money that could have ended world hunger isn't even a tenth of what he paid for. I know it means X/Twitter, but I want to call it shitter, like with the in Mandarin, and an X is like an SH sound. You know what I mean? Miranda Rensberger sent $10. All the Duggars kids' names start with J. J Mike starts with J. Name for J Mike is the secret 20th Duggar kid. See, logic works every time. I feel like I should know what that is. I don't know anything about pop culture or anything. Yeah, is that a thing that I should know?
They've got like 20 some odd kids. The oldest of boy has been charged, and I believe convicted of pedophilia with his sisters.
Oh, well, fucking stop it. Get some help.
They're Mormons, and they believe, or I think I forget what they are. Anyway, they've got dozens and dozens of kids. There was a TV show with them on. That's how they got famous. And they did the TV show so they could support the number of kids that they had.
Somebody, I know, I've heard of that. Yeah. I think I know what that is. I heard about that on TikTok. Call in and tell us more about all the good that religion does, y'all. And then finally, Ami Noser says, great show, thank you, and sent 2 European money to do so. Thank you very much. I appreciate your dollars, and we will put them to good use. And with that, I think that's the end of our show. Jim, do you have anything to sign us off with?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was a great show. I loved the callers, even the one who thought you were a shill. It's odd how often people accuse other people of doing what they themselves are doing, or the people that they support are doing. So,
it is very weird. You can tell me that I'm a shill because I say what I'm paid to say, and you're going to support literally any person in Congress at this moment. I'm sure there's a couple. I'm sure there's a couple that don't take major corporate donors and that actually have their own thoughts and their own beliefs. And for every one of them, there's 50 that you're just literally like, here's the dollar amount for an opinion and a vote. And it just sucks. We actually call it, in biology, we have a word for that. We call it corruption. And I'm weirded out that we don't call it that in America as well, but here we are.
We used to.
Yeah. Anybody, that's the thing. If anybody's going to ever talk to me about like politics and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, the Democrats believe these evil things," whatever. If you don't also support the idea that we should disallow politicians from trading stocks when their job is to manipulate the stock market, you know what I mean? Like, I can't take it seriously.
Yeah.
I can't. But me, I'm a woke leftist, socialist, anarchist, atheist. So what do I know?
Amen. Preach it, brother.
Also, I want to say thank you to Jamie the Blind Limey, who's been our backup host today and has been hanging out, just being cool and handsome this whole time. Wow. We appreciate you always.
Excellent show, guys. Just a few quick notes. Tommy, I see your free will, and I raised you childhood leukemia. Jim, your friend obviously angered the machine spirit of the radar system and needs to pay penance to the Omnissiah. And Forrest, your obvious denigration of my homeland and currency would bother me if I gave 1/100th of a femto shit, but I don't.
Wow.
Thank you for bringing the word femto shit into the show. I appreciate that more than anything else. That's a great addition.
1/100th of a femto. Yeah.
Speaking of shit, last night I had a couple of biologist friends over, and we all drank and beaded bracelets. And my friend Katie, who's a botanist, made me this beaded bracelet, which is piss and shit colors. She specifically made it with variety of yellows, browns, and a little bit of green to make it as accurate and disgusting as possible. So I'm wearing my this piss and shit bracelet all day to remind me that piss and shit is funny.
you have an awesome friend.
She's great. Oh, great. Biologists aren't normal, y'all. If you ever want to become friends with a biologist, it'll change your life for the weirder. I promise you. Like, we're just not normal people.
Being friends with Forrest, I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah, they've seen things strange. You people wouldn't believe.
With that, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks so much to our mods. Thanks so much to our call screeners. Thank you so much to the crew. Thank you so much to the people in the chat, even the ones that suck. Thank you so much to our callers, even the ones that suck. And thank you for watching. Have an awesome rest of your day and never stop learning. Bye-bye. Bye.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Piss and shit.